Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's June 18th, 2021 program. Welcome everybody, we're glad you're here. The program's name is The New Jet Age, the Future of Southwest Oregon Airports. This is the 37th program for our 2020-21 programming year. My name is Kitty Piercy, and I am the City Club President. Support for the City Club is provided by our members and sponsors. You can become a member of the City Club at our website, cityclubofeugene.org. Our programs are always available on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook, and are broadcast on public radio station KLCC 89.7 on Mondays at 7 p.m. We have both business and in-kind sponsors, including our diamond sponsors: Kaiser Permanente, University of Oregon, Peace Health, and Lane Community College, as well as generous support from the City of Eugene and from Lane County. In today's program, we welcome Catherine Stevens, the Acting Airport Director of Eugene Airport, Betty Stansbury, the Director of Oregon's Department of Aviation, and Shelley Humble, the Airport Manager of Hobby Field in Cresswell. Welcome to you all. Biographical information on our speakers is available on our website, cityclubofeugene.org. I would like to thank Andrew Kallick, a board member, for coordinating today's program. Oregon is home to nearly 100 public use airports, ranging in size from Portland International Airport with over 13 million annual passengers to small unattended airports like the McDermott State Airport in Malheur County. These airports are critical to the economic vitality of worldwide. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended global aviation, with passenger air transport down 75% in August 2020, and freight traffic down about 12% during the same span, according to the International Air Transport Association. Here in Oregon, passenger travel at the Eugene Airport in January 2021 remained 60% below its January 2020 level, though there are nascent signs of recovery, including the introduction of service from Southwest and Avilo Airlines. While federal transportation has provided millions of dollars in support for these airports throughout Southwest Oregon, including recent grants to small airports in Florence, Cresswell, and Cottage Grove, many airports find themselves at an inflection point. As COVID restrictions ease, demand for air travel remains strong in many parts of the state, including South Central Coast. Meanwhile, and this is important, the environmental impact of aviation remains under the microscope as the state of Oregon grapples with its climate goals. Are we at the beginning of a new age in aviation? How should we think about airports and air travel in the context of economic competitiveness and environmental sustainability? What new ideas have emerged from the pandemic? We're going to explore those ideas today with leaders in aviation from throughout the state. We're glad you're here to join us. Our format today includes a question and answer period with City Club members via Zoom.
Welcome to the City Club of Eugene. My name is Andrew Kallick. I'm a member of the board and the organizer of today's event on the new jet age, the future of aviation in Southwest Oregon. As we all know, the coronavirus pandemic has had an enormous impact on all sorts of industries from A to Z, and perhaps no one more than the aviation field. And we have three phenomenal experts from Oregon here to discuss the challenges that the pandemic has posed, but also the opportunities for what comes next as we reimagine aviation in this new age. Today, I'll kick it to the three of them for opening statements, and then we'll have a round robin Q&A where we dive into some of the more pressing issues that they are facing on a day-to-day basis. For now, we'll start with Catherine Stevens of the Eugene Airport. Catherine.
All right, thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate you having me here today. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a few slides, and I know there's folks that are going to be listening in on the radio, and I'll just make sure and talk through those slides. You're seeing that okay, I'm assuming? Okay, Very good. Well, let's talk about the past few months and what that has looked like. And I hate to chart you to death, but it's pretty fascinating. If you take a look at the bottom darker green line, that is 2020, and we basically just flatlined as of April last year, and into May, where we started to see a little bit of passenger traffic, but we dropped all the way to 5% of our normal passenger traffic, which was pretty amazing, not in a good way. The lighter green line is 2021, and then the orange line is 2019. So you can see that we really tracked pretty well in our recovery over 2021 compared to 2019. And in fact, we overtook our 2019 numbers as of the end of May this year. So we were a little surprised to see that, but also pleased. We had a very strong Memorial Day holiday, and we think we're in for a very busy summer. In fact, we've been describing it as being slammed back into normal. This is not the case for a lot of the rest of the nation. Nationally, they're seeing about a 75% return of passengers. So what's contributed that for the Eugene Airport? Well, American Airlines stayed with their plan to start nonstop service to Dallas as of March 4th. And so that's been a route that we've really wanted for a long time. It's been under demand, and they are doing pretty well with that route. So that's encouraging. We also welcomed Avelo Airlines. Their inaugural flight to Hollywood Burbank International Airport was Wednesday, May 12th. Eugene was just one of 12 airports selected as the first that Avelo will serve. And so you see pictured there is Jim Lind. He was the manager of people for Avelo, and he's also an Oregon Duck. So we were happy to have him come in on the inaugural flight and celebrate with us. And then, of course, the big news, also during the pandemic, we were able to successfully recruit Southwest Airlines, which is really a great get for our community. Southwest announced 17 new markets during the pandemic, and Eugene was one of them. Southwest will be starting nonstop service at the end of August with twice daily service to Las Vegas and once daily service to Oakland to start, because as we've been watching the other markets they've been going into, we know that they are continuing to add new destinations as well. So our route map by the end of summer will look like this, which is the most airlines we've ever had and the most nonstop routes that we've ever had. So if you would have told me last, April, as we were in our spiral downward of, in the pandemic and no passengers, if this would be what our route map looks like coming out of it, I would not believe you. But it's really a positive, and I think it means that our market will and our local economy will be rebounding faster than perhaps the rest of the nation will. There's still a few routes that have not completely come back. Portland's not quite back. Chicago's not quite back. But we anticipate that coming into fall, we should probably see those routes reestablished. So just a quick snapshot of kind of where we are now and where we will be in the fall. We still are seeing just a little bit of conservative action by the airlines. So in June, we'll be 5% down in departures and 6% down in seat capacity compared to 2019. And then adjustments, like I said, are really continually being made by the airlines. We know that in the forward-looking schedule right now in October, with all of the new routes in the market, we will see a 24% more departures and 23% more seats at the Eugene Airport compared to 2019. Of course, like I said, subject to change. So how have we gotten through all of this? Obviously our revenues took an extreme hit. Anyone that was involved in commercial passenger traffic really suffered through this time period. The thing that really kept us going was all of the federal aid that came our way, which has really just been critical to being able to continue to operate our airport. So first, we did very well under the CARES Act funding with $22.7 million, and also 100% share on our Alpha Taxiway rehabilitation project that summer. The CRISA funds, 3.7 million, and that included some relief for our concessionaires. And then our ARPA funds, 6.9 million, again with 100% federal share on our secondary runway rehab coming up this summer and some additional relief for concessionaires. So even though we've been very conservative about our spending and really spending only on operational and security needs, this funding has allowed us to do some things that we still really wanted to be able to continue. It's kind of a use it or lose it situation, especially for this check bag screening machine. This is our 4th screening machine. We worked really hard convincing the TSA that we needed this. And we knew that if we didn't follow through with this project, that they could potentially give the machine to a different airport. So we followed through on that project, which was about $1 million. And now the TSA is indicating that we may receive a 5th screening machine, which would be fabulous. They're looking at, with Southwest coming in and acknowledging the need for that as well. The other thing that we move forward with, despite our financial constraints, is installing our passenger boarding bridge at gate A1. We'd needed a bridge there for a very, very long time, and it had been postponed a few different times. And this time we said, we've really just got to go ahead and build this bridge. So that was a good project to complete. And then the remainder, we just tried to really find opportunities. We call it our silver lining campaign. So we did things that would normally be really difficult to do. And when our parking lot's completely empty, which it never had been before, we were able to go and clean it and stripe it, making it a much easier job than if we would normally do it under normal conditions. We changed out lighting and improved some of our lighting fixtures to improve just some efficiencies, things that obviously would be more difficult to do with a terminal full of passengers. And so took advantage of some of those opportunities, and also did a top to bottom terminal clean, which is another thing that can be pretty challenging when you've got a building full of passengers. So as part of that, we participated in the early adoption of the American Association of Airport Executives partnership with the ISSA Global Biorisk Advisory Council. That's a mouthful there. We helped to develop the GBack Star facility accreditation for airports. So this is a program that helps airports demonstrate their commitment to the higher standards of cleanliness and instill confidence in passengers and other patrons. So we were one of the first 10 airports in the nation to achieve this accreditation, and we're really proud of that. We also, think about going into a terminal building. We've got plexiglass up now, everyone's wearing masks, and it's been really challenging for some of the folks with hearing impairment to be able to, it's already challenging anyway in a normal travel situation, but with masks and plexiglass, it was really challenging. So we installed at least the first installation of our hearing loop system. It's a system that allows people who have hearing devices that use the T-coil technology to be able to stand in front of it's basically an icon that shows where to stand, and they're able to hear it really well with the person on the other side that has a microphone. So those are installed at all of our ticket counters and our car rental counters. And we are really hoping to be able to expand this soon to the rest of the terminal building. We also decided this would be a really good time to sign on to the Good Traveler carbon offset program. They've reduced their price tag significantly, and so we were able to sign on to that. We hope they keep the price tag low, because I think it makes it a lot more doable for smaller airports. So with this program, you can go on their website, calculate your trip, and know what carbon offset you would need to purchase to be able to offset your air travel. And then, of course, with all of this demand, we're back to 2019 numbers, which is just incredible. So we also know that there's more demand coming, especially this summer is very busy. We know that we are pulling passengers back from driving up to Portland, which is a real positive for our community. So this is the future, accommodating really our current demand, because as of September, all of our ticket counters will be full, all of our gates will be full, all of our remain overnight aircraft parking spaces will be full, and all 3 heavy pads will be under full utilization. So we'll be at max capacity, and we need to move forward with an expansion, but it's something that we're going to do in a smart, sustainable way. And I can talk a little bit more about that. I think Andrew has a question coming up about that. So the future is really closer than we think. Alternative aviation fuels, electric commuter aircraft, piloted aircraft, piloted electrical vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, or eVTOL, and autonomous eVTOL aircraft. They are all coming our way, and actually much faster than I had thought, and maybe much faster than the entire industry had thought. So we're really needing to learn about this and figure out what kind of infrastructure we're going to need to put in place in the future. So here's the pie chart that I think really should be the big message. We still have 43% of our passengers who live within our local catchment area driving up to Portland and catching flights. Now, this is a pre-pandemic number, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens after the pandemic. But this is really where we have some great opportunity. And I can talk about this a little bit more with one of Andrew's future questions coming up here, but pulling those passengers back to utilize their local airport is beneficial to our local economy, and it's beneficial from a sustainability standpoint. So we can talk about that a little bit more, but the main thing is we've launched into a Fly Local, Fly EUG campaign. We're really encouraging everyone to utilize their local airport, and especially with this opportunity coming out of the pandemic to meet the passenger need and also the future need as well. So I will stop there, and I know we've got some great questions coming up. I'm going to introduce Shelley Humble. She is the airport manager at Cresswell. Shelley?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Andrew, for having me, asking me to join in this forum. Aviation is very near and dear to, I believe, all of us on this panel. Cresswell Airport is, it's a general aviation airport, and for some that may not know, it really is the gateway to aviation. It is where our pilots are born. We are the type of airport that people can bring their kids to look at airplanes, to watch them take off, to watch skydivers land. Flight training, we have 2 flight schools here on the field. We have 4 maintenance shops, which is just totally awesome for a small airport. We have Young Eagles rides, which is with the EAA, which is an Experimental Aircraft Association. And they do Young Eagles rides for kids between the ages of 8 and 17 to get their feet into aviation. As most know, we are experiencing a shortage of pilots, and they have to start at the base. Most pilots will go, some will go to college-based education. Others will start at a general aviation airport who have had just the passion to fly. So they come to our airports, they learn to fly with other pilots that had the same bug, that all they wanted to do was fly. We have several of our pilots that started here, and I've been here 22 plus years. So I've seen some of those guys who were kids when I started go from being a private pilot all the way up to commercial pilot. One is flying for Southwest Air. One is flying for Delta. So it's neat to see as they grow and branch. These types of airports, and we have several in Oregon, are very much needed to get that spark of aviation. So we are seeing a lot of changes. We will be seeing a lot of changes with the fueling, with electric. There's a lot of changes coming down in the future, and we need to be able to evolve with them. We are also, one of the mainstays that we are for the city of Cresswell is we are also listed as the Emergency Operations Center for the east side of the city. Our city is unique in the fact that I-5 runs directly between us. So we have a west side and an east side. And if Cascadia hits, we won't be able to access one or the other, depending on how severe the damage. So our airport is one of the top 5 busiest general aviation airports. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Betty.
All right. Thanks, Shelley. I'm Betty Stansbury. I'm the director of the Oregon Department of Aviation. And for those of you that are not familiar with our agency, we are a small 12-person state agency located in Salem. We provide free and low-cost services to the aviation community with a strong emphasis on the 97 public use airports in Oregon. We provide grant programs and pavement preservation, and we do obstruction evaluations. We provide assistance to locally owned airports on land use issues or development near the airport. So that's kind of our role. We also look at, on a statewide perspective, the impact of aviation in Oregon. And you may not be aware of this, but there are over 300 companies in Oregon that are aviation related. They employ about 215,000 people, and aviation in Oregon has an economic impact of about $29 billion, which surprises some folks, know how active aviation is in Oregon. And when most people think of aviation, they're thinking getting on an airline flight, a Southwest Airlines flight that I'm so pleased to see Southwest going into Eugene. So most people just think of airline flights, but aviation is so much more than that. At Shelley's place and at airports all across Oregon, of those 97 public use airports in Oregon, only 6 of them have airline service. And the rest of them are what we call general aviation. And they provide services that to most people are invisible until you need them. If you've ever purchased something and had it delivered overnight, then there's a good chance that a portion of that was on an airplane. If you've ever been in need of an air ambulance service for you or a loved one, especially if you're in a remote part of the state and you need to get to the major medical centers here in the Valley, air ambulances are possible because of the local airports. And the same with organ transplants. If the recipient, or excuse me, let me go back. There is a very, very short period of time that a donated organ is viable. And if the recipient is in a different city or a different state than the donor, the only way that that can happen is via aviation. So those are some things that people don't think about. You know, we're getting ready to start the wildfire season, and for a lot of these wildfires, especially if they're in remote locations and they're hard to access via ground, aerial assets are the only way to control that fire. And almost all of those flights, those aircraft begin and end their days at an airport. So those are a few of the functions that people don't think about. And as Shelley mentioned, the training is such a large part of what airports and aviation do in Oregon. If you've ever been on a commercial airline flight, the pilots up in the front had to start somewhere. And the majority of them started at a general aviation airport, is where they got their initial training at. So those are kind of the unseen role of airports in Oregon. And I think I'll stop with that and then see if there's any questions.
Thank you all so much for those statements and importantly for your work leading airports and aviation throughout the state. Several of you mentioned infrastructure as an important part of your job, and indeed the federal government provided Oregon airports with well over $100 million worth of grants during the crisis, some to keep the lights on, some to work on infrastructure needs that had built up over the years. And so I'm interested in hearing from each of you what you think we need now. What sort of infrastructure investment do we need from the federal government, from state government, from others to ensure that our airports in the state are prepared for what this next generation of flight has to offer us? I don't know if you'd like to start, Catherine. I know you mentioned it in your opening.
Sure, I'm happy to. And it's funny, the timing on this, we literally just were having a project meeting looking at all of the projects that we need to accomplish in pretty short time frame. And it's about 30 projects to just be able to address the demand we currently have. So, the infrastructure package is going to be really, really important. It's great to have had, this whole series of CARES Act, CRISA, ARPA funds. But that function was really to just get us through and maintain airports as a critical infrastructure piece. But we really, we've been a bit behind nationwide in our airport infrastructure. And if we can, hopefully get a package through Congress that will benefit aviation specifically, we'll be able to take on some of these projects that have been, postponed for so many years. So for us, what that looks like is, some enabling projects that allow us to then build out a C concourse and, of course, take those 43% of our passengers back from PDX because we'll be able to accommodate them.
Shelley or Betty, do you have any thoughts on the infrastructure needs?
Sure, I will expound a little bit. We were very lucky this year because of COVID. We got, we received the CARES Act. We received $30,000, which helped us. We're in the process of a taxi lane rebuild. So that helped us complete the parking lot, which was adjacent to it, which we were not looking to complete because of the lack of funds. And then with the CARISA, we have received $13,000, which will help us with the operational shortfalls that we had. We've lost fuel sales over this last year. We've lost a jet that used to be stationed here at our field that is no longer. So that is helping us bridge the gap that we were short. It's hard for general aviation airports. We have very limited resources to get funding. Thankfully, ODA has been a very strong proponent of the core grants and making sure that it's available to the smaller airports that don't see the revenue producing commercial service. And then the FAA with their AIP grant funding system. If it weren't for those, most of our 97 the smaller general aviation airports would be in ruins because we need that. Pavement is expensive and there are no dollars to help with the general aviation. So I see that the government, the powers that be for infrastructure, they need to look at better ways to incorporate the general aviation airports in their funding system. I understand that commercial airports need the bulk of the money. However, for example, the AIP grant funding system, it is a 10% match for any money that we utilize from the FAA. For small airports, we're getting ready to do a runway rehab. It's just under 3 million. Where is a small GA airport going to come up with that 10% match? So there is definitely a serious need to find additional funding for the rural airports that are so important. They're important for Life Flight. They're important for Angel Flight. They're important for so many people that need to get from point A to point B in an urgent manner.
Okay, and I'll chime in as well. So Andrew, you mentioned earlier that the federal funding for Oregon has been about $140 million. And about 97% of that went to the 6 commercial service airports. And then the remaining 3% went to the general aviation airports. And then in addition, And I apologize, I'm at the airport and an airplane is taxiing right in front of my office, so I apologize for the noise, but that's life on an airport.
Yeah, we like that here.
So, in addition to the ARPA funds, that match that both Catherine and Shelley mentioned for 2020 and 2021, on the federal grants, we were able to get 100% funding rather than having to do the 10 to sometimes as much as 50% match. So that was a huge help for Oregon's airports. The need is still great. You know, we have 97 airports with 119 runways, and pavement preservation is an ongoing challenge for all of them. Just trying to keep what we've got, and in some cases, like at Catherine's airport, to try to grow to meet the anticipated demand. But we need help federally on just trying to keep what we've got. So we've got a couple of requests in right now for earmarks to our senators to do pavement preservation projects at airports all across the state. We're hopeful that those may get funded. And then as Shelley mentioned, we offer a small grant program where we assist with the 10% local match. Our revenues, because as a state agency, we don't get any state funding, either general fund or lottery funds. We operate off of a tax on aviation fuel. And the past 14 months, that revenue has dropped by about 50%. And so that's been the challenge for our agency, is just keeping the lights on, keeping the doors open, and continuing to operate and be able to continue to offer our grant program. And then also that fuel tax is set to go away in less than 6 months. And if it goes away, then we will not be able to continue our grant program. So we're hopeful that the legislature is in the final days of session. They've got 12 days left, and we've got a request into them to allow us to continue to collect that fuel tax money so that we can take virtually all of that money. 95% of it goes back out to airports as grants. And so we think that that program is worth saving. And we're hoping that the legislature agrees with that and will continue to fund that program so we can in turn help airports like Shelley's and Catherine's and all the other airports in Oregon a little bit of help with their local match on their grants. So.
Great. Thank you all so much. The next question comes from the president of the City Club of Eugene, Kitty Piercy.
So I have a comment based on what you just said, and then I have a question to ask. And my comment, it seems to me that we need all of us to focus on the money for these general aviation resources, because that is something that crosses the rural-urban divide. And I think it's a very important way to indicate that you get what people need in other parts of the state. So I just want to make that point, that if people are looking for ways that you can find commonality and ability and caring about working together towards common purpose, I think that kind of support can really do that. My question is about a lot of women. I'm looking at you, you're all women, so it's great. But I did want to say that we know that women have lost a lot of jobs during this pandemic all over the nation. And I would like to have you each sort of respond to what kind of opportunities might be for women who had to pull themselves out of the workforce because they had their kids at home and all the other things that were happening in families. And I'd like you to respond to what opportunities you think within your field are available for women here in Oregon.
Sure, I'll jump in there and start. So yeah, you're right. I personally know women with children who had to step away from the workforce because they didn't have options with childcare shut down and that kind of thing. At Eugene, we actually tried to do a little experiment called the Huge Bubble School. So we made space available for our airport workers, City of Eugene workers, to bring their kid to work if they needed to, so that they could continue to work, because the airport workers are essential workers. So we needed to continue to report to work. And I actually had a single dad take us up on that. And we had a middle schooler hanging around with us for part of the school year, which was great fun. It was a great experiment, very small scale, but it did work. And so I think probably, you know, the pandemic has turned everything on its head, right? And we need to think more fluidly about how people work and where they work, and some supports in there, especially, you know, for the single parents out there. And for me, it's not necessarily just a woman issue. It's really a parent issue. And so I think providing some more supports in that area probably would benefit all of us. And here's a great opportunity, because we've had our world turned upside down. We might as well do things differently.
Shelley,
and I will chime in with, we did a lot of upgrades to our technology, so that if we were in need to be able to work from home, not so much myself, but staff were able to, if they could, work from home and still function to a certain percentage to get their work done, keep the position open and keep it moving forward. As far as women in aviation, even at our little airport, there is a maintenance school. Well, 3 of the maintenance schools here actually do some return to service mentorship with LCC, with their flight academy. In fact, we just had a gal who was adopted from Russia, who just went through and has just recently found a position over in Bend. And she was here for just under about a year and a half. She was with us. And we have 2 flight school instructors who are both female. And I do know, as personal experience, is my niece is works for Southwest in the ticketing department, and she was able to function a lot via home because she had her children to deal with. So aviation, it's a huge open area right now for any female, any male, anyone that wants to get into aviation. I mean, they can walk in and realize their dream. There's enough people that care about aviation that will help you every step of the way.
Betty, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. I will mirror what Catherine and Shelley said. We're real fortunate here in our small agency that while we have several employees that do have young children at home who are learning remotely, we offered every one of our employees, with a couple of exceptions for the maintenance staff, the opportunity to work remotely. So for the past 14 months, the majority of our staff has been working remotely with 1 day in the office. And one of the things it's taught us, I was never a proponent of remote working. I personally don't care for it, but I've learned over the past 14 months that we are resourceful, we are adaptable, we find ways to get the work done. And I think that, you know, the Oregon state motto, do you guys know what the Oregon state motto is?
I do.
What's the motto?
She flies with her own wings.
Yes. Yes. And I think that personifies who we are as Oregonians. We are fiercely independent. We're creative. We find ways to get the work done. And we've learned new skills over the past 14 months, including how to work Zoom and Teams and you know, all of these other things we've had to learn. So if there's a silver lining to this, it shows us that, you know, we can adapt, we can rise up to the challenges in front of us, including in our case, a loss of 50% of our funding, and still survive and look forward to a future that we think is increasingly bright, though not quite as bright as Catherine's airport. Wow, I am just beyond pleased that it has recovered so well for you. And I hope the rest of Oregon will follow suit very soon. So,
thank you all.
Thank you. Obviously, the pandemic was an extraordinary challenge, a challenge that may not even have been foreseen. Another challenge that has been foreseen for some time, particularly by I would say youth climate activists globally and right here, is the sustainability of aviation in general. We've seen lots of folks demanding action, including up to avoiding air travel whenever you can. And so my question for each of you is, do you see this movement, call it flight shame or otherwise, as a long-term risk factor for aviation? And if so, what, if anything, are you doing to make your operations more sustainable? Several of you mentioned some programs that you're involved in. I think our listeners would love to hear more about that and what you see in terms of sustainability for the industry going forward.
You guys want me to jump in there? I actually have a lot to say about this because we've really been trying to focus on this at the airport. So first of all, so flight shaming, that's, you know, a legitimate real thing, but I think that the attention is maybe on the wrong thing. And so I actually just wrote a problem statement for the Airport Cooperative Research Program that's part of the National Academies of Science to take a look at this, because there's been a handful of studies that show basically that the per passenger miles emissions for someone driving up to, say, a large hub airport like PDX is actually a higher greenhouse gas emission than if they had utilized the local air service at their local airport. So essentially a passenger choosing to, you know, think about the passenger. So our aircrafts right now run between 76 and about 125 seats. So if you take even 50 of those folks driving up the road to PDX, it's a bigger carbon footprint than if they had stayed in at 80% seat capacity on that local flight, taken their local aircraft for the journey that they're trying to get on. And so I think saying, you know, don't fly anymore, we need to really think about that. I mean, we've heard Betty and Shelley talk about the critical need for some of these flights, for Life Flight, for Angel Flight. During the pandemic, we were seeing a lot of medical personnel traveling to hotspots in our nation to be able to help relieve the medical communities and where those hotspots were happening with COVID. Even, you know, moving National Guardsmen around so that they could administer vaccines, that kind of thing. All of those things are critical infrastructure, but if you don't have a strong aviation system to begin with, then that starts to collapse on itself. You don't have those critical flights when you need them. So by supporting your local airport, by utilizing flights, flying local, not driving up to a large hub when you live within the catchment area of a small hub, you are actually reducing carbon footprint by supporting that. Now, everyone can make a personal choice on if they're going to take a flight for a vacation or not, but my argument is that we need to have that critical aviation infrastructure. And so just saying don't fly anywhere ever again is not the answer. The answer is to try and be smart about it. And then, of course, other measures that we're taking at our airports. We've really focused a great deal on adding sustainability into everything that we're doing. So we've been doing things like changing out to LED lighting for a long time, but every project now is being looked at under a framework of sustainability. Our car wash, we've got to replace our car wash because it's antiquated, but that's an opportunity because then we can put in water reclamation system. We can put in a solar panel system to see if we can basically not have any need to draw upon electricity from the outside to be able to operate that. Through the CARES Act, we are able to obtain some preconditioned air units for our jet bridges, which means that the aircraft on the ground will no longer need to use the diesel generated PCA units. So that's a big win right there. So it's all of those things in tandem that are helping us to really focus on sustainability. One of our latest initiatives, we talked about needing to expand that sea concourse. Well, we're doing an advanced terminal area plan, and it's I've kind of pushed our architecture and engineering consultants to think about this differently because they've kind of always done it the same way. I'm saying we're going to come from a sustainability standpoint, and I actually have them include in the scope for that project kind of an aspirational statement that says that we will identify opportunities to advance the City of Eugene Climate Action Plan 2.0 while meeting the current and future demand of commercial air service, connecting our community to the world. So, taking it from point zero when you're doing any kind of planning or project to make sure that you are maximizing all the sustainability efforts that you can.
Okay, and I'll just jump in, and I concur with everything that Catherine has said. And the one thing I think I would like to say first and foremost is we have to work together. Mm-hmm. Flight shaming is not the answer. We're all working within our parameters to find better ways to save the environment, to go to LED lights. I know general aviation, we are testing different fuels that are not so caustic to the environment. We're looking at electric vehicles. We're looking at all avenues that are out there to try and conserve for the future, but we have to work together. It is not a this and them. It is we are all one team, and we need to work together to find the solutions and work together. Some of it is going to be hard, but that's when you roll up your sleeves and you dig in and you find the solution together. And aviation has to be part of that solution.
And I don't think I could have said it any better than the previous two speakers, so I'm not going to add anything else.
Although I can't help myself, and I'm just going to hop back in and just say, I've actually already had an initial meeting with an airline that is very serious about adding electric aircraft to their fleet and operating it on commercial flights in 2024. So, I was thinking this was much further out, but when they're telling me they've already received, approvals from the FAA and that they really believe they're going to be able to operate commercial commuter aircraft flights that are electric in 2024. That means every airport needs to get very serious about the infrastructure needs right now. And so part of that advanced terminal area study is going to be looking at, okay, what do we need? I know that there's major electrical infrastructure that needs to be put in for those eVTOL aircraft especially. And how do we power that? Is it powered through regular power, or do we need to really start looking more seriously at solar farms and that kind of thing?
Can I say something, Andrew?
Very good. You have a question, Kitty?
I wanted to make to you guys is I think this would, I hope they watch you give this presentation. I'm talking about the Register Guard or the Creswell paper or the Salem paper, because I think this is a really good story to tell about the effort that's underway in this industry across our state. I just applaud you all, and makes me feel really proud that these efforts are being made, because I think it's about our lives. And so thank you so much. And I just encourage you to, I know the British Guard's looking for interesting stories. This is an interesting story. So just putting that out there.
Thank you, Kitty. Shelley, you mentioned how general aviation airports, you have programs for kids. It's sort of the entry point for so many into aviation. It helps fix the shortage of pilots. We're seeing shortages of lots of different jobs these days, including maintenance. And I know that LCC has a program designed for this, but I would love for for any or all of you to discuss the importance of maintenance to the economic impact of aviation in the region, and the potential, for maintenance to provide good family wage jobs for folks in our region. So I welcome any comments on that.
I can start with that. One of the things that I tell people that come to the airport that may not understand aviation a lot, or when they come in and they talk about maintenance, they want to buy an airplane, and you talk to them about, okay, you buy the airplane, you have certain life limited parts, you understand that you have to go into an annual every year. So every aircraft is broken down by mechanics that are taught, A&P and IAs. And the one thing I tell them is the one thing you don't ever want to have to do is pull over on a cloud because your airplane isn't working because you scrimped on maintenance. You don't pull over on a cloud. As they always say, takeoff is optional, landing is mandatory. Mm-hmm. And we cannot keep aviation going if we do not have people qualified to maintain them. They are very complex. Some of the engines are, yes, the technology is back from the 50s and 60s, but they are very technical, advanced. You need to be able to have someone confident work on those airplanes so that you can get safely from point A to point B. LCC has a great program. I know that there's 3 maintenance shops here on the field that take students that are getting ready to graduate, and they spend 6 to 8 months with a mechanic in the field. So they get one-on-one, they get actual work experience. And there's several, but we are in a shortage for maintenance also.
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much more to add than what Shelley just said. Yeah, I've worked closely with the folks at Lane Community College because their funding was in jeopardy for a while. And I think they've come up with some good short-term solutions to get to where they need to be with that program. Joshua's doing a great job of restructuring that program to make it more financially viable. And the program itself is really great, both the pilot program and the maintenance program. So those are really critical for us to keep on our field. I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but it has to do with keeping our tower hours. And also it actually goes to being able to keep our secondary runway. And really it's just a point of pride for our community as well to have, a flight school and a mechanic school.
And I don't have anything to add to that. So.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question. And Catherine, you mentioned at the outset, and we've all been celebrating the new service that has come to Eugene. And I wondered if you could tell our listeners how that happened. What sort of coalition you put together, public, private, and otherwise, to bring that service to Eugene? Because I think it's important for our City Club audience to understand the role that each of us plays in supporting the work that you're doing.
Sure, happy to. And I would say it was a fun and intense process, and especially during the extreme level of the pandemic, because that's when this all transpired. So we had to get kind of creative. We'd had an initial meeting. Well, actually, I'd been meeting with Southwest for 10 years. I always say air service development is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's really true. It's about relationship building over time. So when we had our meeting with the Southwest folks in November, we really didn't think anything of it. We thought it was kind of our normal annual meeting with them. And then they came back a short time later and said, hey, we'd like to come out for a site visit in January. So we knew that they were actually really interested. So, and if you'll recall, in January, we were in extreme level under COVID restrictions in the state. So it was a really big challenge. The Southwest team was very much wanted to come out in person. And so we just made it happen. We've always had a core team that has worked on air service initiatives like this over the years. So it's always been, the airport, the Eugene Chamber of Commerce, Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce, Traveling County, and then whatever the business development arm is. So right now that would be Onward Eugene in that initiative. But then as our core group got together and discussed this, we realized we really needed to make a broader reach as far as community stakeholders. And so I won't read them all, but I just want you to know how many folks were involved. We had, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, we had Technology Association of Oregon, the University of Oregon, and then we had folks from Lane County and Regional Solutions, the state of Oregon, business folks. And so we put together this team of 21 people, and we met pretty much weekly up until, the site visit. The site visit, we spent a lot of time outside just because of the restrictions, but we got pretty creative about it. It was a site visit during the most rainiest, coldest, windiest 2 days of January, but that's okay. But we really were able to showcase our community, our university, and some of the really exciting things happening at the university, and also in our community as a whole. And then we also did an airport site visit as well, where they pretty much kicked the tires and looked at everything. So we also needed to kind of come up with some skin in the game here. So we really needed to come back with a proposal to them of what we would be able to offer, because they were looking to come into markets with having very, very little investment on their end, because of course they're also, we're facing the impacts of the pandemic as well. So all told, between in-kind, cash, advertising, infrastructure that the airport was going to be able to build out and put in place, it was a package of $1.25 million that we were able to offer to them as an incentive to come in. Most of it is, things that we already had in the pipeline, either as advertising or other partners had as things that they could offer as far as advertising. And then our build out of airline space, because we'd had a history of doing that because of a variety of different projects, we were able to offer that as well, to build out some space for them.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We could go on and on, but we have to say goodbye for now. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And thanks most of all to our three panelists for all the work that you're doing for our community and our state. It is greatly appreciated. And with that, I say goodbye and adieu to the next time with the City Club of Eugene. Thanks very much.
This has been our June 18th, 2021 program. The New Jet Age, the future of Southwest Oregon airports. Before we proceed, I'd like to recognize our diamond sponsors. Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. University of Oregon. Support comes from University of Oregon. Since 1876, UVO has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically. More information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health. Peace Health is proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare partner for more than 80 years. Our mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. Gives opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. I would also like to acknowledge our gold sponsors, AARP of Oregon, Network Charter School, and Luvis Cobb. Before we thank our speakers today, I have a few quick announcements. Thank you to our in-kind sponsors, KRVM 91.9 Radio, PAC Info and Simplified Computing, LLC, Dotson's Photography, and a special thank you to public radio station KLCC-FM 89.7 for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. Our programs are always available on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. If you are a City Club of Eugene member, you can ask a question at a future taping of our programs. If you're not yet a member, you should join us and then participate. More information is on our website, cityclubofelugene.org. On our next program, we're going to talk about what's being done about elder abuse. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is recognized annually on June 15th. How prevalent is elder abuse locally? And how is it addressed? We ask these questions and more at our June 25 program. More details and information about future programs can be found online at the City Club's website, cityclubofelugene.org. Before I thank today's speakers, there is an important announcement. During the final weeks of spring term, students in the BEST after-school programs and other Eugene settings have been working on City Club's project, Reimagining Monuments. With the guidance of art educator Malik Lovett, they have explored the idea of what makes a person or event worthy of a monument. They have looked at historical figures and sought examples in their own lives. Then they created monument designs to capture the inspirations offered by these people or events. You can see their designs in an exhibit in the windows at 833 Willamette, starting on June 19th. Thanks to the city's Cultural Services Division and the members of Eugene Round Table Club for their generous support of this project. Now, I'd like to thank today's speakers for a great program. So thanks to Catherine Stevens, Betty Stansbury, and Shelley Humble. This concludes today's program. It's a gorgeous day outside. Go out and be well and stay safe.